Guys, let's call this meeting. Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we are here for the Gateway Board of School Directors Study Session Meeting, Tuesday, February 8, 2022. Can we hear a roll? Oh, Mike's driving nuts when she's not here. Can we hear a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Bova.
Here.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Here.
Mrs. Delaney.
Here.
Mrs. McBride.
Here.
Ms. Mungo.
Here.
Mr. Ritter.
Here.
Dr. Singh.
Here.
Mrs. Warning.
Here.
And Mr. Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to note that we had an executive session at 5 o'clock discussing both legal issues and contract issues. Personnel. And a personnel matter. Yes, sir. Our first order of business are comments from residents on agenda items. I don't think we have anyone signed up for that. We did have a special request from a good friend of ours who would like to speak on something that was non-agenda, but she has a pressing matter later, so I have decided to allow this with my immense power.
Indeed you are.
And don't make me regret it, ma'am.
I will do my best.
Thank you.
So thank you. So Barbara Simons on the Rabbi Temple David, involved in the Interfaith Ministerium. I will note that if the question of equity director and achievement gap is coming up in the meeting but isn't on the agenda, it means that residents who want to speak to it only can speak on non-agenda items, which means it's after the fact. So I'm not sure if you're going to speak about it, but I will just say that I do have a religious obligation that I need to leave at 6:30 or so. My apologies, because I would like to be here longer. So I just want to speak briefly of that. I think that it's tremendously important that we have an equity director that has the skills needed and the relationship with the community also to understand how to get equity. I think that when we look at achievement gaps, that none of us want our child to be in that gap, right, where we're lower in some way. And so whatever you can be doing with your skills, with your connections, with your energies to be able to work toward that, I personally, and I speak for others as well, but I can only really speak for myself, think this is of the highest priority. And I hope that you will continue to work diligently so that soon we can actually, I shouldn't say soon, that we can continue to measure the increasing decrease of any gap we have. But I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. And just a quick response, Dr. Shakey's here. I can say without hesitation that there's not a day that goes by that this subject, in addition to the other achievement gap that we're experiencing school-wide, which is for all students as a result of COVID, there's not a day, there's maybe not an hour that goes by that this subject isn't paramount.
Would now be the opportune time for Dr. Shakey?
Yeah, excellent. Yes.
Yeah,
Let's
you wanna
skip
provide
off our
just
agenda for just a
real
moment. Dr.
quick
Shakey will
overview,
actually discuss equities a bit.
Just a quick update for everyone. We did have the GSD Equity Committee meeting today. The focus of the meeting was to talk about developing a plan moving forward so that we can itemize some things and take a look at some of the critical attributes to make sure that not only we're putting it out there, but we're also benchmarking the progress so that we can continue to nurture the program. Right at the forefront is eliminating the achievement gap. We looked at the overall program and we want to develop domains. The first domain being the systemic structures. And this is an opportunity to look at what are the systemic structures within our district which may be posed as barriers to students. And we're going to go down through there. We're looking at some of the things that we already have, like the GSD equity policy, but we're also including in systemic structures, just another example, how can we expand teacher candidates? And looking into some of those aspects. We also have another domain that's entitled comprehensive support. How are we going to take this group of students that are lagging behind and creating this gap or this opportunity gap how are we going to make sure that we can reduce this gap? And we're going to do it academically and staying focused on instruction, going into the classroom and looking at the framework for teaching, crosswalk with culturally responsive pedagogy. We're also going to look at some equity-based learning walks where we'll target certain areas of the district, go in, make sure that we're looking at exactly what we want teachers to do. That's the academic aspect of it. For the comprehensive support domain, there's also a social emotional piece of this. It's looking at the social emotional learning cohorts we have implemented in the district, also taking a look at the risk assessment teams, and also looking at potential middle school mentoring program for students to talk to students, not only about academics, but also, you know, we understand that you have to, if we want to build increased numbers in AP and honors, that conversation has to start very early, grades 5 and 6, to change the path of students. So that all lies right under that comprehensive support. The other domain that we have is this targeted support. And this is really taking a look at individual students and their needs and really jumping into our definition of equity, making sure that each student has whatever they need to be successful. And we're starting to do some of this with the GHS credit recovery. That was a huge success last semester. Also looking at the tutoring, which is ongoing right now within the district, but also looking at potential of possibly having a math lab at the high school where, you know, the possibilities are endless. I mean, this can be a situation where we have hours where kids of all ages can come in and get some math support, because we found out in talking with parents that this ends up being a barrier. I know it is for me when my child comes home with some Algebra 2 homework or some calculus homework. It's tough. So instead of me or another parent taking their child over to Huntington, we're looking at a possible situation where kids can come right to our teachers because with their curriculum and their expertise, to another initiative to try to close that gap. But that's under targeted support. And the last domain here, the external support. You know, I think very highly of our teachers and principals and the expertise that we have within our district, but we don't try to pretend like we know everything either. We want to make sure that we reach out to some of the people that are really good in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're looking at community partnerships with families, businesses, colleges, some partnerships with CCAC. How can we improve the academic performance of students and also the career readiness paths? So we're looking at all of that as well. You know, some diversity, equity, inclusion leaders from the AIU, Allegheny Intermediate Unit, potentially from colleges, and continuing that partnership with the University of Pittsburgh. So I know I said a lot, but the gist of this is we have a plan that's a draft plan that has these 4 separate domains that we're looking to build, and we're looking to build capacity within the district. So this is just a draft, and this was shared with the committee today. We have extensive notes on some of the feedback that they gave us, but over the course of the next couple weeks, potentially month or so, myself and Dr. Rossi are going to be coordinating with principals to go to the schools and meet with cohorts of teachers, because we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be able to provide input for the plan. We want to hear every individual issue or potential problem within the school or barrier, and make sure that we take some pretty serious notes to make sure that we incorporate things within our plan. And we want to find out, you know, how does the plan look? Do we want to add anything? Just to make sure that we're building capacity within our district, fostering some leadership within others, because we believe that if we all get on the same page and we have this plan, then we can take a look at the long-term and short-term growth.
I have a couple of questions. With this, I appreciate you guys developing a plan. For those who sit on this planning committee, have tasks been assigned and have dates been given as far as deadlines to accomplish certain things to move forward? So we're not just always creating that plan and talking about the plan. As mentioned last meeting or the meeting before, it's time that we start
Yes.
some action and seeing results.
And let me interrupt one quick second. Just to be clear, we've had lots of action and lots of results. What we're doing now is sort of codifying it, and you're right.
Right.
We were here and we talked about, what,
Mhm.
2030, I think?
Mhm.
We wanted no gap.
Right,
So that's a
right.
very macro thing.
So, yeah, I was just wondering if you've
Yes.
kind of given people specific tasks out of this plan, and have you had developed some type of a timeline for yourself so people can come back who are on the committee and submit whatever you're asking them to do, so we can start,
Yes.
making even more progress?
Yep, definitely. We're trying to set this plan up like the comprehensive plan the PDE gives us, where there's actual categories of, okay, who's responsible for this aspect of it? When is it due? When is it done? So we're definitely moving toward that. The first thing on our agenda, though, over the next couple of weeks is to make sure that we could solidify this plan and get everyone on board and hear feedback from all stakeholders. And then when we draft the final plan for approval, then it'll be outlined with the dates and whenever the professional developments may happen, and when we're going to have certain benchmarks where we'll look at our progress. So this is something that's really going to be set in stone after everyone gets the chance to review it. And then definitely we'll be reviewing it to make sure that we're nurturing the plan and it's happening, so that we're not in the same position still talking about things. We normally meet between a month or 6 weeks in between, for the GSD Equity Committee. So about once a month.
There was some talk about maybe inviting some other people on that committee. Has that changed at all? Is there any numbers yet?
Yeah, we have had a couple new members. Right now, we have a few more principals that jumped in. We also have another teacher from the high school who does an excellent job. He was actually in charge of assisting with the Black Student Union. So we have a lot of very good voices on this committee, and a lot of good people that are very energetic and wanting to do some good things for kids.
Dr. Checky, I did hear you mention that you're looking to expand in terms of maybe diversity in the teacher hiring population. What about in the administrative end? I don't know at this point where we stand in terms of diversity in our administration.
Currently, right now, administration, meaning like principals, no diversity as far as African Americans or other nationalities, but we've had a number of principals and administrators over the last several years. Currently, none.
Anyone else for Dr. Shaky while he's discussing this? Nope. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to Section B, Bills and Financial Reports. Dr. Short, take over, do your thing. Would you?
Mr. Schott, you want to take Section B for us, please?
Yes, I will, Dr. Short. Thank you. Section B this evening, we presenting Section B1 list of bills for the month of February 2022. Section B3 budget transfers for the month of February 2022. And we will plan on having Section B2 monthly financial report for the month of January 2021 to be added to the agenda for next Tuesday's regular board meeting.
Section D, Personnel Agenda, Mrs. Crump.
Thank you, Dr. Short. Under resignations for your review this evening, we have 6 listed, 5 of which are retirements, and we want to take this opportunity to thank these individuals for their service and their contributions to the district and wish them well. Sean McGrail has been a math teacher at Mosside Middle School for 20 years. He served 28 and a half years total with the district. Sue Asti, our supervisor of special services, Dr. Fournier, assistant principal at the high school, who has served in 5 different buildings as an administrator. Sherry Sinetti, our food service manager at Mosside Middle, who's been with the district for 27 years. And we're also making the resignation of Mr. Garlek, who will be leaving us, and we wish him well in the new position, and he will be missed.
Also, Patricia Crump.
Hey, somebody got skipped on that list.
Director of Human Resources, effective March 31st, 2022, for the purpose of retirement. Mrs. Crump has been with us for 45 years. No, I'm just joking. Seems that long.
Some days it feels like that.
Has it been 8 years?
Yes, sir.
8 years. So we thank you for your dedication and service to the Gateway School District.
Thank you. We'll proceed to leave of absences where we have 2 listed. Under transfers per the collective bargaining agreement, we have 3 names listed. Under employment, we're recommending Rita Broussard as a full-time custodian. Under supplemental contracts, we have 2 issuance and also 2 volunteers for recommendation. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Anything?
One quick comment, as to what Ms. Delaney was talking about. We're going to be filling some important positions. As a matter of course, we expect to hire the best person we can for the position, but I would certainly like to see us make every attempt to find not only the best person, but, you know, if that best person happens to make us a bit more diverse, that would be more than a happy coincidence. So this is a great opportunity for us to begin casting that wider net if that's what's necessary. And that's, by the way, me speaking, for what it's worth. So direct all your emails to me out there, the people that think that, well, I know what you think because I hear about it all the time. So, all right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bova.
Sure, that's what I do.
Section E, conferences and conventions. Dr. Chaky?
Thank you, Dr. Short. For review tonight, we do have 3 conferences listed, 2 for the PSU MAC Admins Conference and 1 for school police basic SRO training.
Question, comments, conferences? Moving right along, section F, administrative report, items for discussion, elementary education. Dr. Rossi?
Item number 1 is approve the purchase of the Super Kids reading program, Exhibit A. Item number 2 is approve the agreement with Catapult Learning for enhanced school reading instruction training, Exhibit B.
Item number 3, facility agreements. Item number 4, school year calendar. Approve the 2022-23 school year calendar. Item number 5, approve the extension of the Gateway High School Credit Recovery Program and supplemental teaching positions for a spring cohort.
Mr. Schott?
Thank you, Dr. Short. Item number 6, approval of receipt, purchases, and payments for ESSER 2 elementary and secondary school emergency relief federal funds items to the general fund during the 21-22 fiscal year. And that's in the amount of $2,952,439. Specifically as listed below, a portion of the new HVA system to Gateway Middle School, and also the various technology department purchases through Apple Inc. as depicted below. Item number 7 and actually item number 8, these are our annual approvals related to IDEA funds. Specifically, item number 7 is the approval of IDEA Part B, use of funds sub-grant agreement through the Allegheny Intermediate Unit number 3 for the 22-23 fiscal year as depicted and as depicted in Exhibit D. And item number 8, approval of attachment A, notice of adoption of approved LEA policies, procedures, and use of funds by school district of the Allegheny Intermediate number 3, IDEA Part 3 for the 22-23 fiscal year as depicted below and also as depicted in Exhibit E. Items number 9 and 10, these are 2 resolutions that we do every 4 years, both related to the bonds for both of the district's real estate tax collectors. The first one being item number 9, approval of purchase and 1 payment for a 4-year real estate tax collector bond for the municipality of Monroeville real estate tax collector. And item number 10, approval of purchase and continuation of annual payments for a 4-year real estate tax collector bond for the Borough of Pitcairn real estate tax collector. And item number 11, approval of a lease agreement for the rental of 4 modular units related to the Gateway Middle School renovation project through the construction fund for the 21-22 and the 22-23 fiscal years. A lease from Schott in the total amount of $155,055.46 during the remaining duration of the Gateway Middle School renovation project, and that is as depicted in Exhibit F.
Are those for construction site or are those for Mossad?
Mossad Middle School, we had the discussion with the board about expanding that cafeteria area. Yes. Mhm. Currently, right now, in our cafeteria at Mossad Middle School, we have a number of cafeteria tables that are used, and It does get somewhat crowded in there during the 4 lunches. And speaking with Mr. Brown, who's present right here, we've kind of developed a little plan that would expand that cafeteria area, move it outside into the courtyard, put in place 2 doors that are adjacent to the boiler, or not the unit vent system that would access the outside. Am I missing anything, Bob?
I pretty well covered it.
Yeah. So the use of these 2 trailers, portable classrooms, would allow for an additional 15 tables for the cafeteria to expand.
Yeah, it would cut it in half.
Yeah.
Or modular unit.
How
Yes.
long?
But I meant the tables that would be inside for the cafeteria.
The 4 modular units go together to form one. They're like transformers, except they don't turn into monsters.
My point is, this is us responding to, you know, the needs of
Yes. Mm-hmm.
teachers, staff, and outside administrators.
Mhm.
Around situations in cafeteria, really,
Yes,
responding
Mhm.
to that, trying to expand the cap.
that is correct.
Dr. Short, how long before we approve this next week before they would be in place? Mr. Brown?
Once we place the order, generally it takes them about 6 weeks to get everything in and installed.
Does it help to make this an action
I
item?
was going to ask that.
Yes, it would.
Is this an action item?
Yes.
The sooner, Mr. Schott said yes.
All right,
The sooner we move on it, the quicker we're gonna have it in place.
all right, I make a motion to make item 11, approval of lease agreement for rental of 4 modular units, an action item this evening.
Second.
So Mrs. Cerrucci made the motion. It is seconded by both Val and Robin. Take your pick, Bonnie. Do we have any questions on that? Anyone?
Any advantage in delaying this? All heads are shaking no, therefore it's a good idea to move on it tonight.
Does anyone else have any questions about what we're doing and why? No? Okay, do I hear can I hear a roll call, please, Bonnie?
Yes. Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Mrs. Delaney.
Aye.
Mrs. McBride. Aye. Ms. Mungo.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Dr. Singh.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
And Mr. Bova.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you.
So now it's on the agenda. As an action. Now you need to make a motion to approve it.
I think we can do that.
I think you've just put it on as an action item.
All right,
Do it
then.
all in favor.
Yeah, we can do it. So we need the motion.
To
then.
get
Make
some
a-
comments from the residents because something new has been added to the agenda.
Make a motion to add this to the,
It's not added, it's already on the agenda.
Yeah, it was,
Motion.
make
And
a
I think
motion.
you need to.
He wants us to
Motion to
vote on it
approve.
again, because we made it an action item.
right, so this has been put on the agenda now.
As an
Now
action
we
item.
need a motion to,
Approved.
Motion to approve. I make a motion to
favor?
approve.
once again,
Second.
Bonnie, that motion was made by Mary Beth and seconded by Robin
I second it.
Is there any
and
public?
Val. Take your pick, flip a coin. And I don't think we need a roll call this time, right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
Thank you.
Nicely done, everybody. Let's get to work on that, Bob. You said it'll be up by next week.
Next week,
That's pretty much what I heard.
drive the trailers up.
5 weeks and counting.
So that's, so we're moving on to G.
Yeah.
So we're moving on to G, which is, section G, which is resolutions presented by board members.
So we're looking at board policy 200 pupils, 218. It's basically the expulsion. How do I word this? The expulsion process of our board policy, and we invited Mrs. Chelsea Dice here to kind of review this with us, but basically, we just want you to give an overview to the public of kind of how it works now and how we can give our superintendent just a little bit more option and flexibility if we need to move forward ever. Hopefully we don't, but if we do, with any expulsions.
Sure. So presently, your policy
allows for a formal hearing. If the superintendent wants to move forward with expelling a child or student, there's 3 ways in which you can do that. And traditionally, it was with the school board directors. It's also permissible to do it by duly authorized committee of the board or a duly authorized hearing examiner. And we also represent other school districts, and most of our other districts do it through a hearing examiner, not through the school board. When you go through, and according to your policy, if a child had an incident that is expellable, an expellable incident, you have 15 days to reconvene as a board. And that means that you, in addition to your study session, your regular meeting, depending on the timing of whenever that incident happens, you would have to be here again on an evening for the full board to hear what happened and make a decision. If you appoint a hearing officer, and it's my recommendation, because it takes you out of the light a little bit in the sense of the motion, and you get to read then the transcript after everything's been decided, and there's a recommendation by the hearing officer. You get to read everything, and then you guys get to decide if you're going to accept what the hearing officer has recommended. The hearing officer will always be an attorney, somebody who's familiar with the rules of court. It's just like a regular hearing. There's evidentiary issues, there's objections, things like that. Both sides, I would be prosecuting as if I'm representing the district, and then the parent hires an attorney or has an advocate. They can also ask questions of all witnesses. So I was asked really what the procedure was, what we've been doing in the past. And in the past, you don't have many expulsions here. It's very rare. However, to convene for the whole board, I just don't recommend it. I think you're better off having a hearing examiner who knows the law. You guys are here to administer, you follow what your administration says, you question checks and balances. But this hearing officer is also an individual who deals with this type of litigation all the time, knows what the educational process is, identifies all of the due process rights for the students and the parents so that they know what they can and cannot do, and will explain all of the legal ramifications going through the legal process. Whereas if you guys sat here as a board just doing that, it's a little different. And I'm not representing you as the board when we're litigating those cases. I would be representing the administration saying, this is Dr. Short's recommendation to expel because, and then we get into the testimony and things. So again, I think you'd be better off to assign a hearing examiner. And what I suggested was just to amend the policy to say the solicitor, in so many words, would have the discretion or may appoint a hearing examiner on a case-by-case basis. That way we don't list any specific law firm. If we're not solicitors anymore, it's whomever the solicitor is. And then you go out and you find whatever law firm is available that's familiar with these educational cases. So when I sat down with, when some board members questioned me about the process and looking at your rules and what we've done in the past, that's what I recommended. Do you have want me to explain anything more? Any other questions?
I think the most important part of it all is ultimately you're still going to be the ones to make the fact-finding decision as to whether or not to uphold this expulsion or modify it in some fashion, as can Dr. Short modify the expulsion. He has the power under the school code to modify an expulsion length of time. So there's a real check and balance here. It takes the emotional end out of it for you. And it's in the hands of somebody that does this for a living. But again, you get to decide whether or not you want to uphold it.
And just so the public is aware, when there would be an expulsion hearing, and it's very rare that we have these within the district. We do not have typically that kind of behavior. However, when we do, when the board would have voted for an expulsion, it is only for a 1 year.
Correct.
From the date of the incident.
Correct. So,
And then,
yeah.
if I could just add.
Sure.
If the family cannot find education, that's suitable. The district in turn must provide that educational setting.
Absolutely.
So that's important for the public to know that.
And
Up to age 18. I believe, right?
17.
17.
17 if you're a regular ed student. It's age 17. So if a student is a senior and is 17 years old, and you're at an expulsion proceeding, that student may be expelled and not be educated thereafter. It's up to the district to decide, and many of my districts continue to educate regardless. They'll send that student maybe to an
Alternative ed
program,
Mhm.
and they will get a diploma from the residing school, meaning Gateway. However, there's not a legal obligation for a student who's regular ed over the age of 17, so you know.
What barriers has Gateway come across with this current policy that made us look at this to change it?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
And
I
what
think
is
this
the
more of an
cost?
Education for you, so that you know these alternatives are available.
What is the cost of this alternative per student per se, estimated?
So you would have to hire the hearing examiner. There would be a fee associated with that, and writing the recommendation, he or she would be writing the recommendation, and a court reporter. However, if you would expel in front of the entire board, you'd still need the court reporter cost. You just wouldn't have the hearing examiner cost. So it's just the hearing examiner cost and writing the recommendation.
So we don't have to have anyone to
He's going to spend 8 or 10 hours at, it's probably going to cost you $2,000, something like that.
So how many, real quick, how many students have we expelled in the past 5 years?
None.
None, okay. And when hiring, then who will hire and decide who the hearing examiner is? The solicitor?
That's what we recommended, that you just said the solicitor would appoint, but you don't have to amend this.
Right, right. Right.
It could be 2 or 3 different
Right.
people at a time.
Okay, so it's not like we select someone now and we put them on retainer?
No.
Okay, so the other question is, if we have,
Make it clear. We will bring the name back to you before we hire them. So you get to say what, if you don't like the sound of his name, we'll take him off the list.
Or her name.
so I'm assuming if we kept the current policy and we had the hearing in front of the board, we would have the opportunity to ask questions.
As the judge, you would be able to ask questions. What you could run into is I don't want you to create a bias or ask something that might
Be predisposed.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotional
right.
dialogue
that could take place.
We find that boards try to get into the fact
Right.
ahead of
Yeah.
So, and that's,
predisposition.
well, my follow-up question was going to be, once we would receive the report from the examiner, would there be an opportunity for the board to ask questions, additional questions?
Of the student and the incident in and of itself, or?
Yes.
No, so the hearing would be just like similar to, and I don't know if any of you have done like a zoning hearing board hearing. The entire hearing's done, and then whatever is put on the record is final. So if they did a hearing before this entire board, whatever's presented before the board would be put in a transcript, and if the individual was unhappy with the result this board determined, they could appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. The judge downtown would not hear from anybody, they would only see the transcript. So instead of you being the initial judge of the board, now you're sitting like the trial judge downtown, where you're only getting now the transcript. The hearing examiner hears everything, vets the credibility of witnesses. You guys don't. You don't say, I don't like when people wear pink coats, so I don't care what they're saying. But you know what I'm saying? You could have that going on in your head, and so therefore I'm gonna vote against this or for it. So the hearing examiner makes all of those credibility issues. And given that in my professional opinion, you put somebody that has dealt with educational cases in the past, whether they've represented individuals to get them back into school, or have represented school districts to do expulsions or other juvenile delinquency matters. And that way they understand. And mind you, when we do these expulsion cases, we don't look at just the incident. We always present the grades of the students, the prior disciplinary referrals.
Complete profile of the
Yeah, we
individual.
do a whole gamut so that the hearing examiner has, and usually, again, we don't have a lot in Gateway. Other districts I might, but they look at the whole gamut, and ultimately it's what your superintendent is recommending. I'm not saying every hearing examiner follows the superintendent. I've had changes, or I not believing credibility issues and saying, no, I think this really happened. But my recommendation would be to have and this person's impartial. They might not be from the district. They might be from the South Hills, who knows? And so now you don't have that, also that calling. We all know so-and-so from the football team is, in trouble because of whatever disciplinary action. And you guys are all getting these calls. You say, hey, wait a minute, they're gonna have a hearing before a hearing examiner. And then we'll look at the recommendation and see whether we think the recommendation supports the discipline that was recommended. But the examiner actually writes a full opinion. So
If doing it without the hearing examiner, and the hearing was before the entire board, the board doesn't get to ask questions then, do they?
they're judged. So you guys at the end could ask a question. You could
Absolutely.
definitely ask a question. I fear.
There always is the fear that the defendant's attorney is going to say you are predisposed. You already had your mind made up. You have a bias.
You know the family, or they're your neighbors, or
And the
they called
parent
you.
can also request to have an open meeting.
Right.
Or a closed meeting.
Right.
Just so we're, we understand that open, anybody from the public can come in and sit in.
It's up to the student parents.
Right. So
right now, do you guys, does the solicitor, as this policy stands, are you guys involved with this process with the board?
Yes.
if we would have a student that rises to a level of needing to be expelled, yes, we would be, I would be representing, or our firm would be representing the administration in prosecuting or litigating that case against that student. So yes.
So in this case, with the court reporter and the examiner, you are still doing this.
Still doing the
you're
exact
still
same
doing the
thing.
Same
And the
thing.
defendant has a right to a defense attorney and put on his or her case.
So the added expense is only the hearing examiner.
I've been involved in probably 10 expulsion hearings over my career here at the district. And they've all been in front of either the board as a whole or a committee of the board. Couple have been open to the public, and court reporters have been there, or press reporters. So, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic. But again,
Probably should have read this, because I wanted her to give the introduction, but so basically what is on the agenda is just to add one line to the board policy that says the solicitor may designate a hearing officer to conduct expulsion hearings on a case-by-case basis. That's all it does. It doesn't change any of the options to have it be before the board or to not. It just adds the one line that says, if we want to have a hearing officer, our attorneys can go ahead and
And for a
recommend and
timing
hire a person to
purpose,
do that.
because if you look later in here, you have 15 days. If you look on that third page, number 9, you have to get those notice of charges out quickly. In some other school districts, I'm getting them all the time, and it's hard, to find. If disciplinary issues increase at Gateway and you guys start having to have these hearings, you are going to be dumbfounded at the amount of times you're gonna have to reconvene and the paperwork involved. It's amazing, because first of all, the process for any of these kids is you always have an informal meeting within 3 days. And so they meet with their principal. And then
If I
after
could just
that,
ipelaborate real quick,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
yeah, and I don't get involved in any
Yeah.
of that.
When there's a disciplinary action at, and we'll just say the high school hypothetically, and it rises to a level of a level 3 or 4 in our discipline code that requires an out-of-school suspension. Level 4 indicates that it would be an informal hearing. And that is when after day 3, it's mandatory that the family, the child meet with the principal and essentially review the case to determine, okay, what other evidence has been submitted. The principal then acts as judge and jury to determine if that child will return back to the school environment, or the suspension will be extended up to 10 days out of school or anywhere in between. And that's simply done at the high school level with the administration.
Right. And then in some other school districts, what we do, like in one of the other school districts, we do a second informal hearing when it goes to the 10-day with the superintendent and someone from my office. And we sit with the parent and student, depending on the age of the student, and the superintendent will review the facts with the individual and the parent and say, you have already been notified that you had to be here on this day, and we have a date certain of a hearing scheduled. However, I want to talk to you. I want to tell you what I think. By the end of this meeting, you will know what the superintendent has going to render their decision. So if it's going to be a 1-year expulsion because someone brought a weapon in, or if a weapon came in, and for example, I had one where it was a student who had gone camping and he had a fork, a spoon, and a knife, Swiss Army knife. He was a Boy Scout, but it's a weapon. You can't bring a weapon into the school. So my superintendent sat down with him. Nice kid, he had great grades, great attendance. Can't do this. So that superintendent deviated from the standard and said, okay, well, I'm not going to go forward with an expulsion hearing if you agree to, and it was lesser discipline. The superintendent gave some discipline because you got to learn. However, it wasn't as extraordinary as some of the other ones where I've seen actually knives come in, I've had guns and things like that. So in that instance, the superintendent can then deviate from whatever the standard is or the weapon and go lesser than a year expulsion. But what we do is we sit with the superintendent and the student and the parent, and the superintendent tells the parent by the end of that meeting, if we go to hearing tomorrow or whatever day it's scheduled, this is what I'm recommending. So either you can take it now and we'll do an agreement, a disciplinary agreement, or we'll have a hearing examiner here, whatever day it is, and we'll go forward and have a hearing. But in that instance, you have a long process. Unfortunately, Dr. Schott doesn't have the time to go see every kid. And so when you have this extraordinary circumstance come out, he wasn't possibly at that meeting, that third day. But he doesn't know the kid, maybe, because the kid never had an incident before, no prior referrals. If you add in another informal hearing or meeting with the superintendent, you might be able to curb that. And I think that's what you do anyway, for the most part, before you get to the expulsion deadline.
Yes.
So we just want to add that one sentence, but we haven't had an expulsion here in the last 5 years, and you
Right.
had 10 across your career.
Can I just talk about that? Because I can see what you're getting at and why this is coming up.
Well, and I know what's happening in the school as well.
Well, it's no secret that we've had a lot more outbursts, and it's no secret that all the schools are having issues with COVID behavior and learning loss and emotional well-being of our students. And this is just one small aspect. And we as a board and as a district and our administrators need to really look at helping our kids recovering from COVID. And that might in some ways be strict discipline, but in other ways, we might have to look at behavior therapists. We don't want to just take a kid who's struggling and kick them out of Gateway. That's not the goal here. We want to make sure we're helping all of our kids succeed. And that means if they're in alternative ed, and that's good for them, where they're getting behavior therapy to change their behaviors so that they don't repeat, right? We want our kids to get help. If they're in cyber and they're temporarily and they need help and are not succeeding, is there something we can do to help them in cyber? Is there a way we can bring, include them in our tutoring programs after school? Or, so it's not just, okay, hey, we have a problem and we're going to start expelling kids. That's not the point of this discussion.
And
The point-
also to ensure that it's done correctly if you
Right.
bring in and
Well, it's to give our superintendent options. I mean, he does a fantastic job already. He does, but, more options for him to make things easier for him and our administrators is one goal. It's to open up the discussion with the community and the board and administrators on other areas that we might be able to help our kids succeed. Because I don't want to just take a kid, who's, isn't doing well and we don't know why. Is it have to do with issues at home? Does it have to do with COVID? Does it have to do with depression? Does it have to do with learning loss and frustration? I mean, we all know, we all see what's happening, but what can we do to help all those kids? We're responsible to every kid that's, a taxpayer in Gateway School District, Monroeville and Pitcairn, to try to help them to succeed. And this is one small aspect, but I think it opens the door for us to talk about other areas where we can meet these kids' needs.
Well, I agree with you. I guess my concern is the case by case. Seems kind of gray.
Well,
So
because I just assumed it was more of keeping it open-ended because you don't have many of them.
Mhm.
And so if they increase, there might be, I've used one law firm one time and then they might be unavailable and I have to go, and so it's just bam, bam, bam. But it's not because of what the student is or what happened. It's more of because I just used that language because
Yeah,
I don't know how frequently it's gonna happen.
And I ask because I'm sure there are people who don't know what you mean by case
Oh,
by
yeah, it was
case,
nothing
and-
about like, oh, well, if this person is,
No,
can't
no.
speak English, then we should use this.
No,
for,
no,
yeah,
no,
no,
I'm
none
not
of that.
saying, I'm not saying that at all. Just,
No.
it was just, I just wondering, like, what are the parameters to decide when you're making a decision on which direction, how you're going to handle something, how do you know what case and what?
Frankly, well, like in other districts, when we get a whole bunch of them, like if there's a big fight in a district, we might have like 7 or 8, and I got to get them in within the 15 days. But I can't have that same person there for hearings every time. I have to then go to 3 firms and say, I need one on this day, one on this day, one on this day,
Okay.
and you'll do these 3, these 3, and these 3.
Understood.
And that's really how it is. And it's
Yeah, I just needed for it to be
yeah,
clarified.
so I
that's
just
all.
wanted it to be open, that it wasn't any specific firm that would be the hearing examiner or any specific person, and that it could be, as Dr. Short says, well, yes, we need one now, no, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I definitely agree with what you're saying, Mary Beth, because, and that's why I used that term before, restorative justice and all, because if it isn't case by case, there are some very deep-seated issues. Anyone, whether or not you've worked with students, there are situations that need to be dealt with before you can do a blanket expulsion and say, it's just this or that. So I definitely agree that it has to be looked at case by case and that individual, and exhausting every possible measure of what could be done to help that child hopefully succeed. You can't always do that. Realistically, I know that too, but you still try to exhaust every possibility. before moving
With every incident, we try to get to the root cause of what's going on within that child's life.
Right.
Because we know that in a lot of cases, it's just an outburst of something else
Oh,
going
yeah.
on. And
It not sometimes, but
resources
always,
now,
in a
yeah.
classroom, always. And I've always, not always, majority of the time, I've been successful by pulling that child aside on a one-on-one and able to find out, okay, let's go all the way back and figure out what happened to cause you to get to this point. And that's what I would assume we would do too before getting to the expulsion.
I was gonna say, it takes a lot to get to the expulsion.
it does, yeah.
To begin with.
What's good about this conversation is the public gets to see this. and they know you're concerned. They know that you're looking at alternatives. This is one of the alternatives that's being explained to you. You know, it's a good process. I'm glad everybody's having this open discussion, because I don't know that the public knows anything about what goes on when you have a discipline issue that rises to the level of expulsion. So it's good. It's a good thing.
Hey, can I add that as a board member over the past 20 years, I can recall only 3 hearings that actually came before the board, and they were very serious allegations. So I think that 3 out of 20 years is really good.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Williams. Anybody else have anything on this matter? Well, thank you all. All right, let's move on to comments from residents on non-agenda items. Do we have Len out there? Len Young? No. How about Paul? Paul, you want to step to the mic, tell us who you are, tell us what's on your mind?
My name is Paul Gagnon, resident. Gateway graduate. I've been in contact with a lot of Gateway track and field and cross-country alumni, and we would like to get the running track at the high school named after Coach LaBeouf.
Oh.
He's coached 46 and a half years and counting. If you count cross-country and track, I think it's 40 section championships, 5 WPIL team championships, and 1 state championship. We just thought it'd be a nice gesture for someone who's donated so much of his time to the district.
Brilliant suggestion. Thank you, sir.
He might be the longest tenured track and field coach in the state.
I can't imagine anyone else.
Yeah, I do want to tell you, we were going to name it John Ritter, the John Ritter Track.
The John Ritter Memorial thing. You have to wait.
This is a little awkward, but we will take that under advisement for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Brilliant. Excellent. Okay. All right, let's move on to some reports if we must, eh?
Okay, next Tuesday, prior to the regular scheduled board meeting at 5:30, I would like to call a building and grounds meeting. I will have Mr. Bob Brown, the architect, and the director of the project from Gateway Middle School, from Foreman Engineering there, as well, to discuss flooring at Gateway Middle School. So we will go over all the options for a possible approval of the terrazzo floor in lieu of the vinyl tile floor.
And we'll be doing that here?
Yes.
Okay.
5:30.
Got it.
All right, that's all I have.
Anyone else? What do you got, John? You want to handle this part? You'd like to do that whole list of who's got a report?
Well, I don't have very much. I'm just going to attend the Pennsylvania School Board Advocacy in-person knock on the legislators' doors in April of 2022. So coming up, and the intergovernmental meeting that we were hoping to have in January with Miss January. I talked to the deputy mayor, and we're trying to plan an April 2022 meeting. We're building the agenda right now.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Swing over to here. Ms. Mungo, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Mrs. Cerrucci? Ms. Warning?
One thing, there is a over at our sports complex, if anybody wants to join in to see them.
Thank you, ma'am. Oh, so we have here Dr. Singh.
No, thank you.
Ms. Delaney.
Yes, a couple of things. One, this month, February, is actually Heart Health Month, and the reason I'm bringing that up is, well, several reasons, but one of the reasons is that we know the seriousness of heart disease, not just for adults, but when I even brought up some information that talked about now the fact that we're thinking of our kids, acquired heart disease is kind of most often associated with adults, but children and teens can be affected. And the most common in children are the rheumatic heart and Kawasaki disease. When I saw Kawasaki disease, that reason it struck me, my grandson, when he was born, and they were military family, and I thought it had something to do because they were stationed in Okinawa. That's how much I knew. But my grandson was stated as having Kawasaki disease, and I had never heard that. So I looked into it a little bit. But also when you think of that with, as I said, adults developing things such as high blood pressure, cholesterol, potential other things that lead to heart attacks and strokes, we as adults, we as parents and all, we have to take care of ourselves, but we have to start watching even diet, nutrition, everything with our young people, because we want them to have a very full life ahead of them. And we are beginning to see more of childhood obesity and diabetes and other things that can not only affect their academic, because they'll maybe have to miss school or be out, but even on the other ends, depression, other things can affect our young people. And we just don't want to see that happen. So we just need to be so mindful in terms of the health with our young people so that they can continue on. And also, this is Black History Month, and I looked at the National Geographic for Kids, and it has a really interesting spread of how it started, what it honors, and so forth. So some may even want to look at that because it is geared to tell not only adults, but young kids as well what goes on. And I'm wearing pink and red because last Saturday, many may have known that that was when pink goes red. Now, of course, you're saying, what do you mean pink goes red? Well, one of the first African-American women's sororities, founded in 1908, AKA, their colors are pink and green, but they were pink to go red in association and also working with the ideas of the heart health that we're talking about and promoting for this entire month. So that's why I'm wearing pink and red. I'm through.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, it's tough to follow. That's true. That's why I've got you doing it, Mr. Bride. Nothing. I've got just two quick things, and I'm wearing this black for Black History Month. Just saying.
Okay.
So you're not the only one who does this sartorial thing, Mr. Lynn. I've gotten a number of emails from people who disagreed with me on a number of things since I've done this for a month. But the point is, they were emails that were, respectful and to the point. They told me what they thought. I responded. We move on, which is how it should work. I hope it keeps working that way because people are going to continue to disagree with some of us up here. We keep doing it in a collegial way. We'll be a better district. I'd also like to call out someone in the community, a guy named Tim Frazier, who happens to be a friend of mine. He was a tremendous engineer who retired just last year, and he heard us talk about the bus driver shortage. So Tim actually went out and got himself trained to drive a bus for Gateway. Yeah, he had a long career. He's ready to take a rest, and he's doing this to help out. So we all can't do things to that extent, but you want to make it a better school district. This is one way to do it. So, you can complain, that's fine, but you want to think about a way to make it better, that's probably better. All righty, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Oh, hold on, no, I forgot about Ms. Bungard. Ma'am, you still there?
Yes,
Heather?
thank you, Mr. Bova. Thank you. I would just like to take a moment to congratulate all the retirees, especially Susan Asti, our supervisor of special education. I'd like to thank her for all her hard work and dedication over the years. She truly will be missed, and we wish her, good luck in all of her future endeavors. And I would also like to take a moment and congratulate Patricia Crump too, and thank her for all of her support with the district. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Yes, Mr.
John
Ritter.
has one more thing here. Listen, it's been 50 years since I graduated from Gateway, and so we're on the planning committee for a get-together this summer. So if you know of anybody who's still alive that graduated in 1972, now here's what we're going to do. We're going to invite the class before us and the class after us, because a lot of those classmates, they graduated together, know each other. So if you know of anybody around the country, send them have them get in touch with me via my email address so that we can include them on our list of folks who might want to come to this little get-together, okay? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, now do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Adjourn. Thank you. Have a good week.